Okay, let's bring in our pollster, Matt Towery. Once again, thanks for joining us.
Sure.
So why in the world would Mitch McConnell deliberately turn Elizabeth Warren into a martyr?
Insider Senate politics. I mean, this is, Craig, classic case of gotcha. He had the opportunity. They knew that she was violating the rule, which technically she was. But when you're talking about Coretta Scott King, you're always better off to leave that alone, because it just became an opportunity for Elizabeth Warren to get additional publicity and to raise money. And she's raised a lot of money off of it just a day or two after those statements, just in that time period. So it was a mistake, I think, on the part of McConnell.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the dumbest thing you've ever seen, how stupid was this?
Oh, I'd give that about a 6. I've seen a lot of stupid things.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's make sense of the polls, if you can make sense of the polls.
Yeah.
What is Trump's approval rating? It's in the low to mid, maybe high 50s. If you look at Rasmussen, it's in the low 40s elsewhere.
Yeah, Real Clear Politics average has him down about 5 points. In other words, 5% disapprove more than approve. That's probably about where he is. We're having trouble these days with polls because the methodology that was used in the weighting system did not work in the general election, so I really don't have any reason to think that it's really improved during this post-election time period. It's sort of like everybody just said, oh, well, the polls were wrong. Let's go back to looking at the polls. I think they're off a little bit, but I said, about a month ago, I said to you, I think that, Trump's numbers, I don't expect them to improve much, because this is when a president goes from the honeymoon, the shortest honeymoon in history with him, to a time period when they're trying to implement what they want to do, and that is very, very tough for Trump, and it's very hard for him to fight a lot of media and at the same time a lot of his own new ways of doing things. So I don't expect him to go up very much.
So you have Trump detractors who say, look at Gallup, this is terrible, he's doing awful. Then you have Trump supporters saying, look at Rasmussen, no, he's doing pretty well. Which one do you believe? Or none of them?
But between the two, Gallup has always been my gold standard. So I would say that he's probably not getting a favorable approval rating. But I do think even Gallup has trouble. They all have trouble when it comes to weighting their polls now and gathering polls. So I feel like it's probably just going based on my instinct, which was pretty good in the general election. We don't know how good it is now. But my instinct tells me he's down about, as I said, 3 to 4 points. The nation is very much divided. You can see that both visually if you're in Washington and you see these various marches and the inauguration juxtaposed. It's the way it is. And so I don't think anybody's approval rating or disapproval rating is going to be massively disproportionate. We're pretty evenly split in this country right now.
Last week we showed the double speak on the White House travel order.
Yeah.
Was it not a ban? It's a ban. No, it's a pause. It's a ban. You saw this.
Yes.
What does that tell you about the communication strategy of this White House?
Well, first of all, you have a new White House. And I think that when you look at it, most White House, new administrations, their biggest missteps are in the early days because you have people who are just getting used to their job. This was, I think, although in some ways it's a fulfillment of a campaign promise, so it probably helped the president with his base, it wasn't rolled out in the best way possible. And that of course, is what General Flynn was talking about. It simply was not rolled out in the right manner. And so I think that you're going to see that sort of doublespeak and a little bit of, slip of this, that, and the other, mishandling until they get their bearings. And it was a very bold initiative for a very new White House. And, if you're Donald Trump, you think that's a great idea. If you support him, you think that's a great idea. If you're someone who's been around politics for a long time, used to the old school, you think it probably should have been rolled out a little more delicately.
You called the election for us.
Yes.
Well before the election. Everybody else said it was a slam dunk for Hillary Clinton. So give us a prediction now, something else nobody else is seeing.
I think you're going to see Donald Trump and Congress start to butt heads relatively soon. I think they've got a time period right now where they need each other, but Congress works at a slower pace. Trump clearly does not, and I think you're going to see, as we get into the spring, the bloom off the rose, so to speak, and you're going to start seeing some fighting within Congress and the presidency. It's inevitable. I mean, go back to Jimmy Carter even. He went to Washington, D.C., was going to upset the apple cart. Who was he fighting with most of all? His own Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill. I think it's coming.
You also wrote the book on news vesting. Literally, you coined the phrase. You connect current events in the news cycle to investments. So connect what's happening now to what you think are the best investments going forward.
Oh, well, I think the best investments right now are companies that have been around for a long time because they're going to be around for a long time. And on the technology side as well, I haven't been big on technology, but now I think the Googles, the Apples of the world are becoming the Coca-Colas and the 3Ms of the world from the past. So I think you want to have a diverse portfolio. I don't think you want to dive into stocks right now because the Trump market, the Trump boom, at some point is going to turn into a sputtering. And it's not a knock on the president. That's just what happens. And I think as we get at these companies right now, they got ahead of themselves because they thought they were going to get tax cuts. They were going to have relief immediately when it comes to the banking industry. Now bankers are finding out they may not have interest rates increase. These changes might happen not quite as fast as they thought. There'll be a slowdown in that excitement on Wall Street.
Matt Towery, thank you for your time.
Absolutely.